Hi, welcome to Sabbath School Daily, where we have been studying from this lesson right here, Psalms. This week we're studying from lesson number 4, which has the title, The Lord Hears and Delivers, and today is Wednesday's lesson, which has the title, Defender and Deliverer. Today's lesson is all about Psalm 114, which is a vivid description of God's deliverance of the children of Israel from the yoke of bondage in Egypt. It's a short psalm, so I'd like to read it for you. Look at what it says. When Israel went out of Egypt, the house of Jacob from a people of a strange language, Judah became his sanctuary, and Israel his dominion. The sea saw it and fled. Jordan turned back. The mountains skipped like rams, the little hills like lambs. What ails you, O sea, that you fled? O Jordan, that you turned back? O mountains, that you skipped like rams? O little hills like lambs? Tremble, O earth, at the presence of the Lord, at the presence of the God of Jacob, who turned the rock into a pool of water, the flint into a fountain of waters. Throughout the rest of the Old Testament, we see oftentimes different authors going back to God's deliverance of the children of Israel from Egypt as one of the greatest wonders, one of the greatest works that he ever did in their history. And sure enough, that truly was one of the greatest miracles, one of the foundational moments in the whole of the Bible. In the New Testament, you'll see that several times the authors go back to this one event to point out God's works, his power, and his protection for his people. Today's lesson mentions one of those texts in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 1 through 4. So if you want to see the Apostle Paul talking about this moment, I encourage you to go and to read from this text. The first paragraph of today's lesson says this: "What a poetic depiction of God's marvelous deliverance of his children from the bondage of Egypt is given in Psalm 114. All through the Old Testament and even in the New, the deliverance from Egypt was seen as a symbol of God's power to save his people. Paul in these verses in 1 Corinthians does just that, seeing the whole story as a metaphor, a symbol of salvation in Jesus Christ. One of the curious things about the stories of the Bible is that they go beyond themselves. Now, certainly these stories are true. I believe that these are factual accounts of real life events. The Bible tells us so many of these kinds of stories. But curiously, since they go beyond themselves, they apply to us as well. The story of God delivering the children of Israel from Egypt, from bondage, from slavery, it also applies to us in the sense that the same God that delivered them, the same God that had that kind of care, protection, that wanted to yank them from the yoke of bondage, is the same God that today wants to liberate us, wants to free us from the yoke of sin. And so that's just one example. Throughout the rest of the Bible, you'll find so many stories where we see, in essence, who God is and who he still is, because the Bible tells us that our God is an eternal God without shadow of change. He doesn't change. His attributes, his character, his personality, they remain faithful. They remain the same throughout the eternal ages. And so if the children of Israel could trust in God to open the Red Sea, to protect them from the surrounding nations, to provide for them in the desert, we can also rely on the same God to deliver us, to provide for us, and to protect us from the different things that surround us today. The lesson goes on to say, Psalm 114 also depicts divine deliverance through God's sovereignty as the creator over the powers of nature, which was how he saved his people in the Exodus. The sea, the river Jordan, and the mountains and hills poetically represent the natural and human powers opposing the Israelites on their way to the promised land. God, though, is sovereign over all of them. In the New Testament, with the disciples in that little boat, we see the same kind of occurrence, where the disciples have no idea what's going on. Why is God allowing it? Why is the master sleeping and they're in the middle of the storm and they're going to drown and God doesn't care that they're going to drown? And then when Jesus stands up and he rebukes the winds and the waves, calming them, and then he asks them, why were you worried? You see, the creative power of the universe was there with them in that little boat. And so it is with you. Whenever you are frightened, be that by natural occurrences, and we live in a world where it seems as though the natural occurrences, the natural disasters are growing in intensity and quantity all around us. But notwithstanding the natural disasters, we also have social situations, religious situations, spiritual things that are happening all around us where we become scared and frightened. But we don't have to. We can rely on the same God that opened the Red Sea, that pushed back the waters of the Jordan, that calmed the waves and the winds with the disciples, the same God who provided manna and water for the children of Israel as they were in pilgrimage throughout the desert, that same God can and will provide for your needs as well. The lesson then continues by saying, in fact, for many of God's children in all times and in all places, the way to the heavenly Jerusalem is fraught with danger. The Psalms encourage them to look beyond the hills and toward the creator of heaven and earth. The spirit of Psalm 114 is captured by Jesus calming the sea storm and his proclamation that the church has nothing to fear because he has overcome the world. And this is confirming that while, sure, there are several things that can frighten us, we don't need to be afraid because our God is always in control. It then concludes by saying, the Lord's great deeds on behalf of his people should inspire the whole earth to tremble at his presence. The trembling should be understood as acknowledging and worshiping rather than as being terrified. With God on their side, believers have nothing to fear. I find the last question interesting here at the bottom of the page where it says, what are some of the spiritual dangers we face as believers? And how can we learn to lean on the Lord's power to protect us from succumbing to these dangers that are as real for us now as they were for the psalmists? I think that the answer to that question is in experiencing life with God. The more that we walk with him, the more that we experience the ups and downs with him, the more we come to rely on him. It's just like with any other relationship. For children, they learn to trust their parents because they've gone through past experiences with them. In moments where mom and dad have protected them, have preserved them, have taught them, have loved them, have forgiven them, have led them along in a right way, in a right path, all of these experiences tell the children that they can trust in their parents. It's the same with the Lord. The more you spend time with him, the more you experience life with him, the more your trust in him will grow. And so my encouragement to you is experience life with God. Let him be present in your day-to-day, and I'm sure that your faith will grow. Please remember to study your lesson. If you don't have a physical copy, you can order one online. There are apps and their websites, several of them, where you can find what's being written here. You can find the questions that I refer to, the text that I refer to, and I'm sure that that will be a blessing to you. Also, please remember to comment down below. I love hearing from you. I love reading your questions and your thoughts. It shows me that these videos are doing what I hope that they're doing, what I pray that they're doing, which is to encourage the reading of the Bible and time with the Lord. Remember to like, to share, and to subscribe to these videos. We release one every day, and I hope to see you again here tomorrow for another Sabbath School Daily.